Malibuca is clearly one of the best players and fighters in all of Europe, and in today's video we're going to break down how he easily dropped a 20 bomb in the most recent solo cash cup. Malibuca is landing at Eclipse Estate, and there is no doubt this POI offers a ton of loot. The only strategy Malibuca uses is to simply outdrop all of the opponents around him, which he does easily. He lands on a shotgun, grabs a pistol, and grabs a hollow chest, getting full shield. He easily third parties a fight, and then takes his full shield to continue W-King. In this next fight, there is a mixture of good and bad. He gets tagged up for a minimal damage shot and immediately creates space. The opponent is playing incredibly aggressive on his wall, and he places a backwards ramp and peeks through to get information. He misses the shot, but does get some bleed through with his drum gun. After this though, he ends up taking the wall, then taking the floor, but notice the edit he makes here. It's wide open and he thinks the opponent is a little bit further back and he edits a window in the wall behind him. This causes him nearly to get one pump and he has to back up and use the rest of his heals. After this though, for some reason the opponent just sits there and then eventually edits as Malibuca is staring at him and he gets an easy cleanup on a right hand peek. After getting that elimination, he decides to go out of the POI with a rift and notices this opponent just running around outside of the POI. He starts off the fight with a good amount of AR damage, the opponent essentially panics, and Malibuca cleans his fight up, allowing the opponent to not even have an opportunity to heal. You can now see what Malibuca's plan is. He simply wants to get to the guard tower, and as soon as the bot spawns, he boxes up on it and immediately gets the slurps as well as forecast, and now has everything he needs to continue his W-King spree. Malibuca after this gets 2 more eliminations, but they were mainly brought on by C4, which is no longer in competitive playlist of tournaments, so we're not going to take a look at those. After rotating out of Creaky towards gas station, he sees an opponent shooting at another opponent, and he gets an easy 200-0 with good aim. There's going to be some mistakes in this next fight for Malibuca. He initially starts out the fight trying to lurk on the opponent and eats a big pump shot, but before healing he does get a counter damage shot and then gets some minis off. As he approaches the opponent's wall, he actually ends up getting pre-fired and he has to re-mini back up. Notice how he approaches this fight here. He covers off all of his back angles when he gets right on the wall. He plays one wall behind and uses a nice blueprint edit to get a good shotgun shot off and eventually cracks the opponent's shield one tile away. Notice what he does here, which is really interesting. Instead of continuing with the loot that he has, he actually drops his twin mag AR for the Havoc AR so he can better pressure. Unfortunately though, there is another third party here, but I want you to take a look at how he approaches the fight. Instead of continuing to pressuring from the same angle, he puts the opponent that he's fighting between him and the third party. The fight drones on for a little bit longer after the other opponent uses the rocket to eventually try and third party, and Malibuca doesn't even bother to heal because he's low on mats and wants to get in on this opponent that he knows is weak. And so eventually he continues to pressure and gets in and finally gets the elimination. Malibuca is then going to immediately fight the third party, but he's going to do it very smartly. He doesn't have a lot of materials, so he decides to create some space and then get a slurp off because this fight may not last that long. Instead of cranking up, he looks for peaks to low ground. He then remembers he may have not gotten all the loot on the opponent he previously eliminated. He goes back to his tarp and gets a good refresh of mats as well as an additional slurp. He pushes up on the opponent and makes a minor mistake running on the opponent's wall, eating a good pump shot. But he goes up to a right hand peak, hits a massive shot, gets the piece control with the back wall, causing the opponent to run in it and finishing that elimination. He is immediately third party after finishing this fight, but take a look at how quickly he ends it. He sits and waits for the opponent to run at him while on a right hand peek and gets a good amount of chip damage. He immediately backs up and goes up. He noticed the opponent is all boxed up in metal, but makes sure to attack the weak wood wall. He jumps down and sprays as he does, takes the wall and hits a nice one pump for a quick, easy elimination. Malibuca is really going to show off his competitive IQ in this next engagement. He sees his opponent swimming around in the river and hits him for a good amount of damage with his AR. Notice how he completely changes the approach to the fight. Once he sees the opponent's on a slurp, instead of wasting all of his white heals and getting into a long drawn out fight, he immediately backs off towards Mega City. He backs off, gets all the way to the zip line and hits an absolute beautiful chop out, editing a right hand peek as the opponent falls and hitting a massive 160 damage. Instead of wasting more materials and going to the high ground, he just smartly takes the zipline and finishes up the opponent. His next elimination is as free as it comes. This opponent is sitting in a corner and essentially doesn't do anything but let Malibuca eliminate him. After that elimination, Malibuca notices this opponent just outside of Mega City. Malibuca is then going to use the tree coverage to essentially sneak up on the opponent. Notice how the opponent is spraying at where Malibuca previously built. This causes Malibuca to hit him for a good amount of damage, and then the opponent panics and rockets, and Malibuca is granted a free elimination and the Mythic MK. Shortly after acquiring the Mythic MK, he gets a free elimination on this opponent who's rotating late in zone. Malibuca is still W keying towards the end game, and this is where choosing what target you W key is very important. He initially tries to fight this opponent on a lower layer and ends up getting third-partied by multiple teams that are already established. Instead of continuing trying to force that W key, he simply backs up and goes to a much better position to push the next opponent. After repositioning, he does push the opponent that third-partied him, but unfortunately gets taken out by another opponent back behind him. Though, Malibuca is now much safer and essentially still gets the factor of a refresh. This next fight is nothing too special. He just uses the Mythic MK to create a lot of pressure, and the opponent is not too skilled. He eventually ends up taking both walls and getting a free elimination after sliding in a cone. This next play from Malibuca is incredibly risky. He and another opponent want height, and Malibuca takes a little bit of damage, but is fortunate enough to get a little bit of a chop to gain height. He jumps over his ramp and hits a nice 130 pump. He tries to pressure with the Mythic MK and slides in a cone to the left where the opponent goes. Fortunately for Malibuca, the opponent doesn't hit a hard enough shot, but Malibuca nearly does go down here. Malibuca is then going to capitalize on his power position and get 2 free eliminations with his Mythic AR. He then sees an opponent just ahead of him, boxed up in metal. He uses one of the best rocket plays I've ever seen. He angles it just perfectly where he does the 50 damage and gets right into the box for a free elimination. After this though, Malibuca nearly makes a grave mistake that ends his game. He notices an opponent is going to come up on the zipline and he tries to go for a free shot. Unfortunately, he ends up missing, and because he can't build there, it's a little bit awkward. He does end up hitting the opponent for 115, but the edit allowed the opponent to come in and he nearly goes down, being sub 40 HP. He luckily invests his mats and eventually gets a slurp off and resets. After this, Malibuca uses the vine to get back to low ground and essentially reset the entire engagements. There's only 2 other opponents left, and he easily ends up taking height, making sure to connect to the opponent in front of him. After catching the opponent with a massive damage shot, take a look at how he approaches this. He places 2 ramps down on the opponent's wall, just in case if the opponent edited him, he would still not be able to get piece control. He then immediately gets on the wood wall and does the clicks exploit, getting the wall 1 HP and sliding in, and finishes off that opponent. The other opponent immediately pushes Malibuca. He jumps, hits a nice 120 shot, gets the full piece, unfortunately misses the shotgun shot, but does clean him up with the AR for a 21 kill win. Well guys, that's going to do it for today's VOD review. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please drop a like on this video, hit that subscribe button, and turn on post notifications. And I hope I'll be seeing you in the next one. Peace.